Shrikant, you may proceed.
All right, thank you. Oh, there we go. Right, so briefly put, these are the topics we're going to cover today. Visual guidance, what it's all about, AI, powered process optimization, where does human-machine collaboration go or interactions go? A little bit about safety and compliance, some case studies as we go through this, and some implementation gotchas, if you will. Again, the order in which is not concrete, though I have put the topics here, but definitely we'll start with visual guidance, and then we'll then bring in AI into the mix, and then we'll get into some of the other nuances of it, and then we'll wrap it up with case studies and implementation gotchas that you should keep in mind. So with that said, what are the current challenges facing industrial workers today, and why does this matter? I think that's the first question we need to ask ourselves. We hear a lot about digital transformation. We hear about Industry 4.0. We hear about automation, but the human in the loop is still an important aspect of our manufacturing initiatives, right? Our manufacturing processes. So the challenges that you see with them today is many, if you will. Just to quote some numbers, we are losing roughly 670 million hours every year just because of lost time. And this is purely in manufacturing, right? And that translates to roughly 15 minutes for every worker every day. And what is this all due to? Several factors, right? We have labor issues that we currently see today, 2 million plus jobs still out there unfulfilled. We have a shortage. We have a skills gap. We'll talk more about that in a little more detail here. Then we have several other items like silos of data, not being able to move data across, not share information, things of that nature. And then you also have the nuances of people leaving the workforce. So skilled labor has left your workforce. So what is the net result of it is? Knowledge has walked out of the door. There's a lot of tribal know-how that has been retained by these people who have been in these jobs for 30 years, 40 years, and they have left, right? So institutionalizing the knowledge is one of the biggest challenges that companies have always faced, despite documentation, creation of SOPs, etc., all of that. There is always that little bit that the guy on the floor who was working for 40 years knows he is done. That is not documented anywhere. Various reasons for it, right? What you're seeing also is the new workforce that is coming in, the younger generation that's coming in, requires everything digital. That's the way they consume information. We're literally born with a smartphone in our hand today, right? So the way we need to drive that experience is super important. So that's critical as well. So these are some of the things that you're seeing there. So lack of real-time guidance, up to 20 to 36%, if you will, in terms of impact, right? And on the other side, generation shift alone, we're talking about a 40% shift there. On top of that, what we're talking also about is potentially the ability to reskill and cross-skill people. Again, for reasons that the industry is facing today. So the need for data, the need for information for the worker, the frontline worker, to be able to get what they need to be able to do their job on a daily basis is absolutely important. It's paramount. Whether that be inspections that they're doing, they may be doing some maintenance on an asset or an equipment in the field, whatever it may be, right? That information is super important. And processes are getting more and more complex. So you add in everything that's going in with automation and other machinery that's coming in, you're dealing with more complex processes. So you then have the notion of, I need to train this person again and get them through the process. And you run into this vicious circle where we're speaking to a customer who said the tenure of the employees has dropped to less than 2 years now, in their case. And they require a minimum 3 years for somebody to fully absorb and get into their culture. So think about that problem that they have. It takes a minimum 20 to 40K just to train people, and you have this vicious circle that you're in. What does that all lead to? Friction within operations, right? There's a lot of nuances in terms of where friction can come from. But labor challenges that you see today, particularly with new incumbents coming in, the learning curve that they go through, the onboarding time, the challenges that you face, the issue with retention and turnover, right? All this are problems, and if they don't have that information, they're not able to perform their operations. The other side is being able to detect in real time issues that may occur. These are all things that happen on the floor or in the field. Right? And we were talking about not having access to data in a timely manner. Right? You don't have access to systems, access to data, or processes are so segregated, they're running in their own silos. So the data is not being shared. So you have that issue as well. So if you were to solve all these problems in a meaningful way, in a way that is seamless or delivers a seamless experience, then you're definitely starting to improve operational efficiency, you're improving productivity, your worker is able to perform in a safe manner and deliver quality and deliver the compliance. Right? These are all come into play. It seems an easy way to make that statement. But from a technology perspective, what is required to pull all that together, we will dive into it. So we chose the approach of using visual guidance in AI. And let's think about that for a moment. Why visual guidance? Why does it matter? Anybody? Any thoughts based upon what you've been used to doing in your own facilities or your own research, et cetera, and all of that?
Minimizes errors.
I'm sorry?
Minimizes errors.
Minimize errors. That's human cognition. That's the first thing that comes to play. The reason why we went down visual guidance is because we as humans can consume information at a much faster rate visually compared to textual information. This is super important and very critical for us to know. This changes the entire game in terms of how humans can perform. Back in the day when AR came out, augmented reality was released for the first time, there's a white paper that you should take a look at if you're interested in this, is they conducted a study, and I'm trying to recall whether it is in Stanford and Berkeley, where they actually trained surgeons using AR and VR technology. And this was several years back we're talking about. At that time, AR and VR was just coming in. Right? It was being touted as the next big thing. It never happened, but still, that research is key. The critical point that came out of that research was 90% of the information was retained even after 6 months. That's how we absorb information. So if you look at all these data points that you see here in terms of how we visually process information, how the brain retains it, or how it captures it, and then the learning, how it is improved. These are all very critical in terms of driving towards visual guidance. Makes a lot of sense. And the very early ones, we've all seen this in our travels that we do every day. It's the first time a visual system was put in place. Any guesses?
Aviation?
Aviation. You nailed it. If you watch the plane getting to the gate, they designed a visual system up there where the pilot could watch, and it would actually give them indicators in terms of moving left or right, or you're straight on the path in terms of getting your plane to the gate. That was the first visual system in action. In manufacturing, the Japanese were great at this, right? So the earliest, if you see, the picture looks a little off, but what you see is these are markers, yellow line markers that you would often see on shop floors, indicating pathways that you should take or pathways where forklifts or any other equipment was running on the floor. And you had specific pathways for people to move around, right? Clear markers in terms of how you can navigate around the shop floor. And then you have the Kanban boards, job boards. There's different names that it goes around with, but these were common sight on all manufacturing floors in terms of what you're seeing there with respect to activities that they needed to conduct on a daily basis. And these would constantly change. They would be kept up to date by the supervisors in terms of activity that was running, right? To the extent that they would also capture metrics on these. Not only would they have the jobs that needed to be done, but they would actually capture all the metrics as they went along. A great way to share information so everybody had access to it. Right? It's not siloed, it's not in some paper or file, but a good way to present everything to the entire workforce. With that said, let's fast forward. We're talking about roughly 60, 70 years that we're fast forwarding here. So this is Gartner, the very recent quote around how the workplace is changing. Now, Gartner does, when it says workplace, it talks about everybody. But I want to really focus on the manufacturing, and I highlighted two key things here. One, the need for upskilling and digital dexterity. This is very, very important. This has now become a common theme or a requirement in the workforce today. Doesn't matter if you're on the floor or you have a desk job. It's common across now. So the key takeaway there is that point. I actually have it on the next one. Sorry, I'll come to that. But the key here is being able to have that dexterity to be able to shift based upon your role or whatever the need of the hour is. And the second thing is automation is here to stay. Right? So humans will have to interact with machines. So machines are being made smarter. You've heard of, AMRs, robotic units, etc., cobots. You got those now, right? Anyone using cobots in your research, work, etc., projects? Not yet. Okay. You'll have fun. So it's very important for us to be able to interact with machines today as we move forward. And that's what we will get into in a couple of minutes here. So the key takeaway in this is learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is what is required of the workforce going forward. This is going to be critical. People change jobs so often, people move around so often, and even in the same facility, you have this issue that you may not have enough workers in a certain area or certain department, and you have more workers there, and the need for these workers to be moved around to the other section. This is a classic story that one of the senior executives at Home Depot was talking about a few months back. They had exactly the same problem. Right? So that notion of learn, unlearn, relearn is very important today. That dexterity, the flexibility within the workforce. So what we need to move towards is an experience that is very human-centric, that empowers them, they can do their job, they enjoy doing it, they can do it in a safe manner, they can deliver the quality. So what we're moving towards is this concept of operators, if you will. So there's an augmented operator using wearables, augmented reality, mixed reality kind of devices to be able to do their jobs. You have the smart operator who's probably more using smart assistants and other kinds of accessories. You have the collaborative operator, more with cobots. So this is kind of how they classified it. This is again based upon what the Manufacturing Institute has come up with in terms of how they see the operator of the future is going to change. And lastly, the analytical operator or the analytic operator. More around data, analytical skills, etc., and things of that nature. This is how the operator roles are going to change as they move forward. But again, the ability to move between them is definitely something they're looking at. Now that is all tied to what we call as Industry 5.0. where humans and machines will start coexisting. There's an interesting article I was reading a few weeks back where one of the leading institutes in Germany is doing some research around this, where they are actually introducing smart machine or a smart robot in a cell with a human, and the robotic unit is actually training the human. We're going towards that too. So it's assessing the skill level of the individual based on where he or she is, and then providing the prompts based upon what is required. And using all the senses, haptic, visual, audio, everything. So what does visual guidance look like as it has evolved? The first starting points of visual guidance when it came out was more in the form of mobile devices, your phones and tablets with a key. As technology evolved, that is the first place where they dropped in, right? So you moved from physical boards on the shop floor or monitors to handheld devices, where information was shared in terms of here is the instruction to do the inspection on this particular equipment, or here is how you need to repair this, et cetera, et cetera. Then it went into visual content. And why? Because these devices got a lot more powerful. You look at the days of when the first iPhone came out to the next 2-3 years, and you immediately started seeing how quickly the tech inside the device was changing. You moved from CPUs to now dedicated GPUs, all sorts of things, right? So you're able to now take advantage of everything from images, video, machine vision using cameras. All these come into play. So that example there that I show you there is, again, using a tablet or a phone, but what you're now seeing is you also got IoT integrated into it. And it's got an element of AR because it's actually got the AR elements layered out, but what it's looking at is device-centered data coming off these different sensors, and it's giving you what it looks like. What's the status of the unit as it is, right? And you see an error code here, and you immediately have a prompt to be able to open the command screen and troubleshoot it. That's how interactive these things have gotten. Moving along, with machine vision coming into play, it's become a lot more compelling proposition now. So this is where AR and mixed reality and VR is going to start providing more capabilities. And it's going to start proving itself out within the enterprises or within the manufacturing operations. Today, you still see AR, VR, and mixed reality. VR more so for gaming. Mixed reality or AR primarily is still in the consumer space or retail space. That's kind of where you see it today. One of the earliest adoptions of AR was, any guesses? Who are sports fans here? All of you are sports fans, I know that. NFL, you see the yellow lines on that? That's AR. Right? One of the earliest applications of AR in practice. Right? So the promise of AR is starting to prove out. And now that Apple has stepped in with Vision Pro, it's going to be different. They absolutely disrupt the market in a big way. And time again, they've done that. So it's going to be interesting. The next few years are going to be interesting. We'll have to see how that goes. But what you're seeing here is with Microsoft's example of the HoloLens as one of them. There's several others in the area of AR devices and mixed reality devices. I just pick one of them to kind of illustrate the point. What you're also moving towards is, so this is a human walking around with a unit. So basically machine vision, which is mobile, right? So based on that, they're able to do carry out activity, do their tasks, et cetera, and all of that. In this scenario, what you have is stationary cameras, machine vision again, drawing in, and you're then applying AI on top of it to be able to identify outliers, issues, et cetera. So what you see there is two classic examples. Up there is basically, you've got the different lines where operations are being held. And anything within that should indicate, hey, that's a zone where nobody should be there. The red lines, right? That's the line that's being operated on. In this case, you're looking at safety compliance. So those two guys don't have their hats on, their hard hats on. So this is common now. You're seeing a lot of this coming into play in the manufacturing facilities where stationary cameras are being positioned to be able to check and do that, those kind of checks, including gloves, you name it. There's a lot of different things that they can capture. And then software also has gotten a lot more effective and intelligent in terms of integrating machine learning or algorithms into that to be able to react based upon conditions or rules that you may have put in. Right? So workflow engines have gotten a lot more powerful and a lot more compelling. It's not simply a workflow rule that says, here's what I do and hard-coded thresholds, et cetera, and all of that. You can actually introduce algorithms into it to be able to do calculations and kind of predict what it should look like from there on and react based on that. And we'll talk about one of those examples shortly. But this is kind of where the whole mix of AI and visual guidance is coming together now. So we started with the mobile, just to reiterate, we started with the mobile tablet or the mobile device or the handheld, pure text information that was being laid on first. Then they started integrating images and videos. Cameras got more powerful. Now you're able to do machine vision. And then as machine learning came into play, they started integrating that into the same model. All right, you can see how this is starting to get evolved. So with that said, this is a great example. Microsoft has been extremely good at how they have done their tech in terms of HoloLens 1, 2, whichever you look at it. So dynamic guides. Has anyone used HoloLens here? Yeah. So you should be pretty familiar with this. But what I'm going to play here is really the example they shared with their Toyota manufacturing facility. And the key theme here is something you'll look at right now. Let me see if I can just get that working. Oh.
Accessory to this car. Do you think you can remember how to do it tomorrow? How about 5 different accessories? How about 20? That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? And if you were at Toyota, that's the ask. And with over 8 new or updated vehicles being released in 2022 alone, that ask isn't getting any smaller. Fortunately, Toyota doesn't expect their employees to have the memory of an elephant. When it became obvious that not only were there too many processes to remember, but on top of that, there simply aren't enough hours in the day to take employees from their day job and train them in the processes, Toyota realized something needed to change. They sat down and asked the question, what would a world look like where a Toyota employee could fit a new accessory to a vehicle they've never seen?
Sorry, I'm going to go back to that one. Sorry, I was going to pause there to that exact step. Let me see if I can get to that.
If I told you how to fit a
The key point I was getting to was being able to share information of a process without training.
How about 20? That sounds like a lot.
That is the key.
And if you
So talk about all the time to take it to train.
And with over
You're able to
8
immediately
new
put
or
this
updated
employee in
vehicles being
as
released
changes
in
are being made to the
2022
model.
alone, that ask isn't getting any smaller. Fortunately, Toyota doesn't expect their employees to have the memory of an elephant. When it became obvious that not only were there too many processes to remember, but on top of that, there simply aren't enough hours in the day to take employees from their day job and train them in the processes, Toyota realized something needed to change. They sat down and asked the question, what would a world look like where a Toyota employee could fit a new accessory to a vehicle they've never seen before without any training? They worked together with Microsoft to identify the solution. Mixed reality. Today, Toyota is using Dynamics 365 guides. I'm on location at the Toyota Logistics Services site in San Antonio, Texas, where a new Toyota Tundra is built every 57 seconds. I'm here with my friend Colby, a team member at Toyota. As Colby approaches the vehicle, Guides automatically identifies the car and locks spatial instructions exactly where he needs them. The guide gives Colby real-time, step-by-step guidance on how to fit a lockable storage box to the bed of the pickup. This is a massive improvement on a paper manual. The guidance is really intentional. For example, video with sound effects helps people activate their senses by knowing what good sounds like, or using shapes of holographic hands in position to show exactly how to approach a task. This kind of guidance is just not available in paper manuals and transforms Colby's experience. So Colby, can you tell us a little bit about how your experience has changed since using guides?
So it's a lot easier to use than a hard copy. It allows me to see exactly where my hands are supposed to be, exactly where my tools are supposed to be, and allows me to be more confident in my installation process.
That's so great to hear. Feels like the guidance is much more intentional, and I agree. I just don't think we can get that experience from a paper copy.
So that's mixed reality for you. And that's how it has changed completely. So now let's talk about something more interesting, which everybody keeps talking about, generative AI, LLMs, etc., and all of that. So what's the promise of this within this landscape? So this is starting to come into play now in several use cases. So companies are seriously taking a look at even generative AI or large language models, even in the manufacturing space. I'm not only talking about using it in other business processes as they look at it, but also in the shop floor or in field services or MRO kind of activities, right? You think about all the large manuals that you have, several SOPs that may have been put together, equipment OEM manuals. To be able to go through that, figure out where the process is for a specific issue, or hey, I've got this error code, what do I need to do? So in the previous examples that we were talking about, it was a little more structured. Somebody did the programming to get it there. We're now moving to this paradigm where it can be more conversational, more dynamic, more on demand. So if you think about the evolution of a worker today or an operator now, you start with the initial process of training, and in some cases, maybe training is not even required. If you go guides or mixed reality kind of experiences, they can learn as they go. Then you get into the mode of using ER and other technologies to be able to reinforce the process. As they do their job, they can continue to consistently execute, right? So the reason for all these is basically to ensure consistency in execution, quality, compliance, all these things are taken care of with the idea that they're able to operate safely. I mean, you look at any of the market research that's coming out or that has come out in the last couple of years, there's a huge push towards, or there is a leaning towards, even within the workforce itself, to go digital. They like to go there. They're much more happier doing that. It's about 80% plus. They would rather move to jobs where they have that same kind of experience as well. And on top of that, now, once you've gotten this worker or operator through that kind of experience, training, and then into this reinforced process of doing their job on a daily basis, you then get into this model where the guy knows the job, he knows what he needs to do, but then he's like, okay, I need help here. Right? He's stuck at a problem and he needs immediate help. So typical response is, hey, I need to drop the tools, go call somebody else. We don't do that anymore. Keeping this aside, I'll come to this shortly. Even within the new technology that has been introduced with AR and other experiences, or even with handhelds, etc., you now have ability to do remote collaboration. So if you take the same Zoom, Teams, and other kinds of experiences, they have been integrated into processes today to be able to actually call for help immediately. You don't have to drop your tools down, or neither do you have to travel all the way to get to that location to troubleshoot that problem. So the operator on the ground in the field can actually do a remote call, and the expert may be at home or in their office. They can do a live video collaboration and work through the problem. So you save on downtime, you're more efficient. You save on travel costs. Knowledge is being shared. See all the benefits coming up there. Right? So now you're moving towards, maybe the expert also is not required over time. You can start using LLMs and Gen AI to be able to provide that capability. Because you already have that repository of information. It's there in your content systems, right? You got your SOPs, your processes, your documented processes, all these are there. So none of that is throwaway. You can actually take that and leverage it through LLMs. You can start looking at how to provide that capability based on queries that are provided. It can go the other way too. You scan a device, maybe a QR code or a serial number on a device, and it knows immediately, or an equipment, and it immediately knows what it is. And then it may start with immediately checking and saying, hey, you're not done the 6-month maintenance on it. Is that what we're doing right now? That's the kind of experience you can go towards. All these are in the realm of possibilities today with what is coming out with the integration of LLMs and Gen AI, right? So there's also this notion of, should we push the boundary and start getting into data as well, to be able to provide that information as well. So not only are you looking at this kind of data that may be based upon unstructured, PDF documents and other documentation, but you can also get into your actual databases as well, to be able to extract information from there. All technically doable. Right? Okay, I need to fast track. I'm running short of time there, sorry. So briefly going over AI-powered process optimization. So there are several topics in this that we could talk about. When you think about supply chain, it's been beaten to death, if you will, right from the days of doing, you start with your MRP, you're doing forecasting, demand planning. How do you optimize inventory? How do you optimize, warehouse layouts, your plant layouts, etc. There's a lot of different things that are going on there, right? Including things like introduction of digital twin. These are all part of that AI process optimization that we talk about. The example I picked here just to speak to for a few minutes is on maintenance. And maintenance is so critical, and again, ties into what we were going to talk about, which is visual guidance, etc., and all of that, because it is part of the process where the human is still involved in the loop. Equipment goes down, there's some potential for you to, use, a remote way to monitor, troubleshoot it. But if you need the human to go in and physically do what he needs to do, or replace a part, things of the nature, you still need that capability in here, right? So that's the reason why I picked this topic. One of the other key reasons for maintenance is, one of the key things around maintenance is it is 70% of your production costs. That's huge when you think about it. The maintenance of any equipment that's used for manufacturing, that's kind of where it stands. So with that said, moving towards what we call predictive has become the name of the game, right? And this is commonly used now. It's very compelling. You can see a lot of benefits that it gives you, apart from just not only saving on cost and downtime, you can see all these other benefits. So what has been done with this is, with AI particularly, some of the key things that they look at is predicting remaining useful life, detecting anomalies. If you got, you're doing diagnosis and equipment, it helps you with the diagnosis of the equipment. There's several machine learning models already there in this space that you can leverage to be able to drive that. And with digital twins now, this has become much more advanced. So you don't have to physically look at the asset there in the field, the equipment itself. You can have a digital twin run through the same scenario and assess and see what's going to happen with it. And with that prediction, you can take necessary action in a much more timely manner, even real time, if you will. Right? So this is an interesting example that I picked up, where you're talking about OEMs actually driving this as a model of their business now. And this has been going on for a while now. If you think about GE with their aircraft engines, or Boeing with their planes, or BMW with their cars. In this case, you got refrigerator units. All these are now coming off the equipment OEMs. They're actually providing the capability to actually monitor their equipment in real time using sensors, et cetera, and all of that, and then be able to drive interactions based upon any anomalies or issues that they see. Now, the last thing that really is required, if anything, is if physically an operator needs to get on site, then they can have the same experience, which is a visual guidance to say, here is what I need to do. Now, the operator themselves need not even go there. They can have the end customer person be there with a device, and then the expert from the equipment OEM side can direct him and walk him through the process and say, here's how you do it. Right? So you see savings all the way, if you will. So in practice today, BMW does that with their cars. So you got sensors on all your cars where they're able to tell you when it is ready for servicing, when certain things need to be done in your cars. Right? Same thing with Boeing. With their aircraft engines. They're monitoring them in real time. They can tell you issues that occur, and they're able to proactively send information across to the airlines. So there are several other examples like that in this case that we can speak to that goes along the lines. So with that said, let's get to the last one here. So this is kind of now getting right into Industry 5.0. We talk about human-machine interactions. So machines and humans are going to coexist, that's a given. So what are some of the things that you're going to see? Common one that you will start seeing is gesture recognition, right? Based upon movements of your hands, body, etc., you're going to be able to interact with machines. Haptics, right? So again, based upon vibrations, etc., and all of that, we definitely use that. We're getting to also in the concept of virtual humans, outdoors. It's a common topic or theme within gaming community. It's being brought into this year as well now. And the more extreme one, of course, where we know the one who is doing this now, Elon Musk is working on this, where you can actually integrate chips or interfaces into your brain to be able to do certain activities. Right? So these are all coming up in the next few years. You're definitely going to see a lot more coming up as the hardware, the hard tech is evolving in this space. There's already quite a bit going on within this. Right? Gesture recognition in particular, where you're able to see the hand movement, the fingers, etc. You got some excellent machine learning algorithms that can immediately do that today. And you can use that. I mean, mixed reality in particular HoloLens does a pretty good job of it when you see that in terms of being able to pinch, move, zoom in, zoom out, all these kinds of interactions that you can do there.
10 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, about 10
Oh, yeah,
minutes.
we are about done. So just to wrap up, this is kind of the entire summary of what is all going on in this space, if you will. So you start with visual process guidance, you're starting to digitalize processes, you're getting into integrating AR, et cetera, and all of that. There's remote export collaboration, I should say. They also uses AR and VR in a lot of cases. Intelligent workflow optimization that's out there that we spoke about briefly. And then training, immersive training, where you can get people moving with activities that they need or daily tasks that they need to undertake. Right. It is super important in terms of using these kinds of technologies, primarily because when you talk to customers, particularly in activities that they're doing, for instance, we were talking to TJ Maxx, for instance, right? They have huge distribution operations. And all they do is people coming into their warehouses, they have to tag the merchandise, put it on the floor. And that process takes time. They train their people anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks on just the tagging process alone. And they are looking at shaving off seconds to see how they can improve them even further. Enhanced situational awareness, that's very important. Again, visibility into systems and processes, right? That comes into play even with machines and humans interacting, right? Being able to immediately detect, like a forklift is moving around and it's able to immediately alert and say, hey, you got a worker nearby in a certain zone, right? Not the red zone, but in a yellow zone. There's a possibility of collision. These are all things that we need to keep in mind. Again, at the end of the day, being able to reduce human error. So from a implementation point of view, there's a lot of things in terms of, I didn't want to go through the roadmap in terms of how you implement all these things, but the most important thing is really, you're going to be dealing with a lot of training and change management as you're going through this process. This is critical. This is the key piece, and despite whatever tech you may put in place and how you go about it, these are aspects of it that need to be in place to be able to be successful. Right? So being able to offer everything from being able to have everything from leadership alignment, change agents in your organization, to integrating your workforce into it, making them part of the process. So no longer are you dealing with silos of people, you're dealing with a team. It's got to be a lot more collaborative. In fact, Gartner talks about the middle management is going to disappear. He's just going to have teams. You're talking about managers, senior managers, etc. They're going to be gone in a few years. It's kind of their notion of how they see workplaces changing. So the other thing, culture is very important. So today, if you look at the workforce, they're all about flexible schedules. They talk about wellness. They talk about being an inclusive community. So being able to recognize their capabilities, their work, these are all important aspects of it. Right? And again, getting the feedback, etc., and all of that. So with that said, future of workforce is here, it's a reality, and we need to make the change to empower them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions with the speaker?
Yes, I have two questions. First of all, thank you for the interesting presentation. This is a very interesting talk. My first question here is, we talk about AI and visual guidance here. I wonder how you view the aspect of data acquisition as well as trainings necessary to make these models work. What are the necessary steps to program something? For example, the example you gave about Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
Is it so cost effective that you can actually have a team of programmers or machine learning scientists to create some models that will guide the workers to do their job? What is the production rate or the kind of production facility that will first adapt these technologies? Which ties to my second question here. Who do you think will use technology like this first? What about small and medium-sized manufacturers? Where do you see things align in this space?
Yeah, no, both are good, both are great questions. So in the first one, just to be clear on the Toyota example that I showed you there was no training involved. They were not using AI. There was purely a mixed reality interaction that they drove in terms of creating that procedure or SOP. What you saw on the Tundra assembly line, where he was assembling removing the boards and assembling the unit, that is pure mixed reality workflow. There was no AI involved in that.
But you have to recognize the object, right?
Yeah, the object recognition.
The object recognition, yes. True, sorry, I keep forgetting that because we go a slightly different path in terms of how we evolve that. Yeah, good point. So the object recognition is being done in a couple of different ways. Because again, it comes down to the hardware. I'll be very clear. I want to be clear about that. Some of them have gone down the path of using a process of what we call asset tagging, which is basically a pre-process to identify and say, these are the items that we're going to be working with. And so they are integrated into the workflow. So you have a pre-process that is running that basically identifies them, right? And in another case, what you're seeing is there's technology now available where you actually can integrate 3D CAD models right into it. So you don't even need that object detection kind of capability in some cases, right? Again, it varies because there's not many players in that space. There's a company called Vertex that does a phenomenal job around that, which is basically taking 3D models and being able to integrate into your experience. And you can tie in all your work instructions around it. Right. But in terms of object detection, yes, you definitely need a lot more data, a lot more training in terms of that. Again, we have not chosen ourselves to take the path yet, because a lot of it really comes down to how fast can you process at the edge. Because most of the time you end up with a scenario where images are captured, you have to take it back to the cloud, and that latency doesn't help. Right? So being able to generate everything right there at the edge, we're starting to see that come through now. If you look at wearables in particular, most wearables don't have the same power, if you will, or compute capability like what a HoloLens or maybe a Magic Leap has today. Not many are there yet. With Qualcomm coming out with a recent Snapdragon 2 processor, I think you're going to see a shift. That's going to provide a lot more capability in terms of what you could do on the device itself. And that'll make it easier for you to do some of the processing. Most of the adoption, to the second question, most of the adoption in AR and mixed reality, or even AI for that matter, and I consider AR and mixed reality as part of AI in reality, because you're looking at image recognition, object detection, all those things. I sometimes forget that myself, so apologies for that. Is that it's more an enterprise, a larger enterprise play. Means the larger companies are easily able to take it on because of one, based upon what devices they use. If they're using wearables, it's CapEx. It's a significant spend that they have to make, because the HoloLens is like $3,000 plus. They're not cheap units, right? So you're looking at that kind of spend to be able to bring them in. On the other hand, they've gone down to handhelds where you can still drive AR experiences. You don't get truly the mixed reality kind of experience, but at least you can get the AR experience, right? Which is simply superposing digital information on the physical layout. Now, getting that to the smaller and medium players, I think is the medium manufacturers is going to be key, because that's really where you're going to see a lot more of, based on the size of the market that you see there, you have a lot more smaller and medium-sized manufacturers, and that's really where it should go. And I think democratizing a lot of the tech to get it to that level is going to be key. Make it easier for users to be able to use them and produce their experiences. There's a significant amount of lift today in terms of building these kind of experiences. It's still very custom driven, but once you start bringing those tools out, which are starting to come out now, you're going to see that change.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question, actually. I think your presentation was a great overview of the technologies in this space. But I thought I would hear a little bit more about what Vieaura is doing, and specifically, in this space. And how
I didn't want to tout about what we're doing with products.
Some of the products that you guys are working on.
Yeah, so we took the approach. So when we started out, we started with the whole AR as the way to go. That's kind of how we started out of the gate. And we built out when we built the MVP, that's kind of where we went to with the AR experience. But what we soon realized is not everybody is ready for AR. Again, it comes down to enterprises, right? And we deal with this notion of, hey, that's super cool tech, but are you ready for it? And when you start working with large enterprises, you realize that the sales cycles are pretty big. Right? It's not like within 2 months or within a couple of meetings, they'll agree to going forward with it. Sometimes it is a year before they even move forward. So we had to step back and look at what the acceptance would be in the market when we looked at the market fit. So that was a technology risk we carried. We moved back and refactored everything to tablets and phones. So we went to handhelds. That's kind of what we did. So today we can run everything on any device. That's what we do. So we backed up So we backtracked also on our AR, primarily because we didn't see the kind of, we didn't want to go down the custom route. Trying to build a AR experience for every use case was not where we wanted to be. So we have an engine today which is no code and AI integrated. You don't program anything. It's like Lego blocks, put it together, your process is there. Or you can auto-generate the process. We have algorithms that actually just simply can consume the SOP and spit it out. And we have kind of gone ahead a little bit and integrated now LLMs into them. So we are actually producing based upon procedures, based on requirements. We have conversational interfaces that produce actually the need of the hour as they go. So we're starting to take we're just doing our beta version of AR now. So we kind of moved that timeline, brought it to this period, because now with Apple coming in and all that, timing is right. So we're going to get moving on.
Mhm.
So what you'll see with our experiences, you already have the no code, there's the AI, the LLM makes it a lot more compelling. And there's definitely appetite for it with enterprises, both big and small, that we have tested this with. So we are starting to test that. And then now we are adding the AR piece. So it makes it one complete solution.
Too early for any customer success stories.
No, we have customer success stories in the no code AI space, but not in the AR space yet, because we kind of stepped back. Yeah. So we're doing that with, there's a few contract manufacturers in Wisconsin that we're working with, where we help them with machine changeovers, quality inspection procedures and things of the nature. One of the biggest problems they had was training. Is onboarding times. They needed to shrink that significantly. So we help with that as a first step, and then we got them onto the lines.
All right, well, let's thank our speaker again. I guess if there are any additional questions, since we're over our time limit now, so please come up, after we close here and talk with Shrikant.
One comment I will put out there, if anybody is interested in doing any internships or anything like that, or you got any projects, or we have projects that we do on an ongoing basis, if you're interested to check it out, let us know. Flexibility will have my contact information, so you can contact them about that. Absolutely. All right.
If there are any questions online, you can also reach out to myself, and I can get you in contact with the speaker. Just a quick announcement. So our seminar series, it just started, but it's a little bit shorter this semester, so we only have 5 lectures. Our next lecture will be next week, and we'll have Dr. Correa Baena, Juan Pablo from MSC, professional MSC, give a talk on solar cells. So looking forward to that one. But in addition to that, there will be 2 additional seminars in October and then 1 in November. So we do have the schedule posted on our website, research.gotech.edu/manufacturing. Thank you very much.